Welcome to the show, everybody. I want to remind all of you out there to like and subscribe. Today, we're joined by filmmaker Godfrey Reggio. Godfrey, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Welcome to all the people that may show up.
So, we spoke on the last show about Charles Baudelaire, the French poet, lived in the 1800s. Can you tell us a little bit more about Baudelaire?
Um, I don't know his biography. Um, I do admire some of his poetry, the little I've read. He says things like uh, that humor is the stigmata of original sin. That moves me deeply because humor is who we are. He also says concerning love, which is who we are, when one flower dies, don't despair. There are many others in the garden of life. So he's trying to give hope to a hopeless situation. As important as Baudelaire is, I would like to mention someone similar but of another period. His name is Jean Baudrillard. He wrote many books. Um, he wrote one that particularly impressed me called The Illusion of the Real. Let me show you the cover of that book. Can you see it?
Yeah, it's a road with clouds above, lines in the middle of the road.
There you go. In the film I did, Once Within a Time, this plays a prominent part in the epilogue of the film, this shot, this idea of a shot. We created it ourselves with a big hourglass in the middle of the road and all kind of people. So what I want to say about this guy is that more interesting than that book is this little book, which I'm going to recommend to everyone, called The Evil Demon of Images. Might be hard to get. It's a lecture he gave in Australia sometime in the 60s, I think. And since we're all dealing now and absorbed with images, like a child today will have seen more images in one day than a child in the Middle Ages will have seen in a lifetime. Same thing for sound. Sound is so prevalent now that in the mother's womb, children are not hearing the heartbeat and becoming isolated and might, as you might say, psychologically come out of the womb injured. They come out with less hope because they can't hear the mother's heartbeat, which is essential for well being. So, all those things are happening to us. And Baudrillard, who is a master of the visual, says that we all want to see the visual. That's how we, more than through metaphor or through word. But the visual now is plastered everywhere. It can't be but seen. It's present in every place we look. Is this working for you? Is this
Yeah. Uh, and I guess I was gonna maybe tie it to a quote by Baudelaire about dance. And I think that motion and the sound they work together in a way that's a big part of what you do.
indeed? It's motion is part of the body's language. Um, in Chinese, one word has over 30 ways of it being expressed, not only through the spokenness of it, but how the eye says it, or the hand says it, or the body says it, or the ear might say. It's how it's performed. And in English, it's all about phonics, which is the second largest language after Chinese. It's how are you? How are you today? It depends on how you say it. It's not the story, it's the storyteller. And that's what the dance is for me.
And I think tone means so much. You're touching on that there. You know, the words can be the same, but the tone of your voice can
Indeed.
express everything.
Indeed. Indeed. Now, let me mention this. This is worth hearing, I think. I mean, to show you my book of Baudelaire, half the pages are gone in another place, probably where I put them on the wall and can't find them, but I've had it for years. But listen to this. For some time now, in the dialectic relation between reality and image, that is, the relationship we wish to believe dialectical, readable from the real to the image and vice versa, the image has taken over and imposed its own eminent empirical logic, an immoral logic without depth, beyond good and evil, beyond truth and falsity, a logic of the extermination of its own reference, a logic of the implosion of meaning in which the message disappears on the horizon of the medium. It's not television in the early days. It's not what is said, it's the medium it's said through. Here's a guy telling us that our world is not what it appears to be.
And I think he also goes to that the image has its own truth, that it has its own logic, its own. The image itself has a truth that's its own and its own world to back that up.
Well, it's a tricky slope. We are, as humans, to be truthful, good, and beautiful. But as we have this current, we have the other. So we should be not an ism, opposite of truthful. We should not be evil, opposite of good. But evil and ism can be beautiful. So we have the opportunity to be beautiful and the opportunity to be evil. It's up for us to play.
Yeah, in Baudelaire's first book, Le Fleur de Mal, The Flowers of Evil, was banned.
Yeah.
So I think there is a lot of that original sin type references in his writing.
Well, original sin, what is that? We are told, we live by stories, we are all told we're made in the image of likeness of God, whoever our God is, okay? But indeed, you might consider the first image of God. We are made in the image of likeness of God animal, animistic. The first visualization of that, is in a cave somewhere in France, southern France. Okay. These people lived in three zones: the heavens, the earth, and hell beneath. Hell is not of the Christian world. Hell is of the hell. This tree grows in hell. It's below the ground. Hades. It's where life comes from. Like in New Mexico, we have more volcanoes than any part of the planet. We also have the biggest one on the planet, and volcanoes connect us to the source, where we assume we have a magnetic core, but we really don't know that. So what I'm trying to say is that we appeared as human beings 200 to 300,000 years ago. That little of time. It's a little bitty speck. And the first image of God is that we humans are made in the image of human and animal. And so the picture of that is this.
Huh.
It's the first picture. And we know also that humans and a few other elephants, only humans bury their dead. Only humans bury their dead. The elephants can't dig the hole, but they come back. They have the bones. They renovate. They venerate them. But it's from the very beginning that humans believed in a soul. Now, Plato says the earth is indeed possessed of soul and intelligence. The tree has a soul, the mountain has a soul, the water has a soul. They've made the animals have a soul. The early humans made this compact because they are predators. It's those that are eat are now connected with those that are eaten. That is the path of life, not the ecology of the day. Or we are born to eat meat. Men with spears to begin with, women with nets that were woven from grass that took years to get little rabbits and foxes. We're all born predators. And we made a pact. The pact of nature is animistic. It's with love that we could track. We would never not use any part of the animal. It's not like the industrialization of the turkey and the chicken and the cow and the fish and every other thing that we murder. And all these animals have feelings. So this is who we are. And it's a sober look, but it's a freeing look. The first structures that humans made were dolmens, were altars to the soul of the unknown. The soul never dies. But as Lao Tzu says, if heaven too had emotions, heaven too would grow old.
Godfrey, this is Charles Baudelaire's great definition of being an artist: to be away from home and yet find oneself everywhere at home, to see the world, to be at the center of the world, and yet to remain hidden from the world.
I mean, that's a description of what art may be for those that dare to be brave enough to do that. It means that one doesn't have a job with art, one must live art. And art is everywhere, but it must be in your exclusion cell, as it was. You must live in a room, he's saying, or in a space that is your own, where you create, where there's north, south, east, and west, where you can be whoever you are, and that's your world, to see the big world all around you, either through word or sound or visual or screaming in the room, a private place, a place of silence so that you can hear the enormous sound of the world. That's what I think Baudelaire was talking about. It's a
Yeah,
privileged space available to anyone who dares to take it. Those that are willing to see the right to useful unemployment, to quote Illich. Deprofessionalized professionals, people who are going to leave the norm to discover a boundary they didn't know was there. That's what I think Baudelaire is saying.
yeah, I think it's similar to the descriptions we've heard from Lao Tzu or from the Buddha about knowing the mysteries of the world from your home. But in this case, it's applied to the artist. And the artist being in solitude, and whether it's editing a film or writing a book, that connection with yourself is, and then the world beyond that. Do you want to say something about us not being as separate from other
Yes,
people as?
yes, yes. Let's use this term. We're social hermits if you're an artist. We live in isolation. The quieter the senses, the more they hear what's going on. As I've said before, we'll be surprised how much the ear can see, how much the eye can hear if we're quiet. Then it becomes loud with a sound that's given to us, a contemplation, a vision. So to be in the world, however, we don't shun the world. We're in the world not for its distractions and nightlife and vacations and cruises and fine dining. We're here to serve. We're here to observe. We're here to hear the world in a manner that we can take our familiar and give it back to the world in an unfamiliar way so they see their familiar for the first time. That's what the artist can do.
Is there a deep responsibility for the artist too? I mean, we know there's pop artists, but is it a higher calling for?
Well, I don't higher is hierarchical. I don't like that
Yeah,
pyramidal. There are many paths to the source. The old dictum says this. This is interesting. Herzog made a movie about it. The shortest way is the longest way around. Okay? Not the gizmo. The shortest way is the longest way around the circle. One step at a time. You learn to walk by walking and falling. You learn to be in the world by being in the world, a mendicant, as it were. A mendicant goes out in supplication and in compassion. I think it's this Pope Francis that says irony is the sister of compassion, so that we may deal with the the imperfections of what it means to be a human being.
Godfrey, tell me about Louis Buñuel, the Spanish filmmaker.
Well, when I was a young brother, Christian brother, we were not allowed to see movies unless they were Monsieur Vincent or The Life of Jesus and Mary and Joseph or something. And one day a brother got permission to show me this film by Buñuel called Los Olvidados. It was brother Alexis Gonzalez himself, called Bubbles, a very interesting character. I saw the film. I had a religious experience. I was working with street gangs, and I projected it on the walls of the barrio that looked like what Buñuel had just filmed it in, the barrios of Mexico City, not the big streets, but the barrios. So it was soul moving to me, and it brought me into cinema. Not that I could do what Buñuel would do, but I could do my own version of what I thought his art was all about seeing the truth, about hearing the truth, about seeing kids that were thrown away by society, considered criminal, mentally ill. Nobody wanted, living with one parent with delusional street action.
Los Olvidados, the young men in the movie, you were at the same time mentoring juveniles in a similar parallel situation. Was that part of your connection to the film? Was that you knew real life versions of these characters on the screen?
I saw real life versions of the characters on the screen every day, and the police and the city and the social service people trying to round everybody up. These are kids whose kids were in the pinta and the joint or penitentiary, and there was a parent, usually a mother only. There were gangs, not like today, which is drugs and cars and shoot and ask questions later if you don't pay your $200 fee for your bag of whatever. These were barrio based. These were family based. They go way back. We had 7 gangs that I had 7 gangs I worked with about 15 Vista workers from all over the place. And there were another 6 or 7 gangs in town, but except for one, judging by their names, they were rather new and certainly not in the papers because we were confronting police, burning down a police station, uh, following them, knowing their 10 codes, being put in jail, being brutalized in jail. All that shit was going on. And we threw our own fiestas. 3,000 people showed up, did our own security, had our own music, fed us, did our own beer. So it was a real wild time. It was for all of us in the 60s, our Vietnam. It was our war at home, to borrow a word. And it was real as could be. And they were not only men gangs, they were women gangs, and they were as tough as could be. And what they said was the law. Famous women like in Santa Fe, Lorraine Sanchez, famous not in your world, but world famous in the barrios of Santa Fe, Lorraine Sanchez. Well,
And
she ran for mayor. She ran for mayor on our ticket. She went to prison for life and is the only woman that escaped from the Santa Fe penitentiary and was gone long enough to beat the odds and came back to glory, ran for mayor, with after Roman Salazar, all on the CCRG, a barrio political party founded by the barrio people. Dora Battle of the day was elected. Jerry Ortiz Pino came into power there. We knocked out people like, we had an impact. We had 16, 17% of the vote.
Godfrey, we were just talking about the 1950 Luis Buñuel film Los Olvidados, which was a really pivotal film for you and changed you a lot after seeing it. It's set in Mexico. Uh, its ruthless, almost surgical examination of how the poor prey on one another is almost horrifying of all, almost the most horrifying of all films about juvenile crime, is what this New Yorker review says. But you knew these characters in real life, or some version of these people.
They could have walked off the screen of Buñuel's set. Could have walked off the screen. It was that real. Not only the genius loci of the barrio with dirt street and dirt houses and handmade shacks and many people living in one room and fires outside and La Hirona running up and down the river. All of that is real as yesterday. That's disappeared now. The gentrification of the barrio is there with arts and crafts, residential zones, and progress and development and all of that. I want to also say that when Buñuel introduced this film, he did so in Mexico City with Frida Kahlo and all of the communists and the cognoscente, the intellectuals, and they booed him, they spit on him at the screening. He's giving us a bad point of view. We're not like that. And if we are, our business, no one else's. He goes to Cannes, he gets the main honor there, and a wonderful guy who was a French, who was the Mexican attaché in Paris, Octavio Paz, writes this incredible review. I recommend anyone interested in Los Olvidados to check out that review of Paz. Anyway, because he won, he came back to Mexico and everybody loved the film all of a sudden. He was a hero because of the image, not because of what he did. So the image again, the evil demon of images, Baudelaire, it all fits together, and he knew that.
I also read that Salvador Dali, the artist, cut ties with him, saying it was because Buñuel was an atheist and a communist.
Oh, well, what we know about him, they did a film together to begin with in Paris where they cut the eyeball. I'm much more a fan of Lorca and Buñuel. These were the real guys. Like Buñuel's autobiography, which he never wanted to write, got forced to. He revealed things that nobody doesn't, like his quote impure thoughts about wanting to go to bed with every woman he saw. He was attracted to women. How he had to deal with hell. How he wasn't a Catholic, but he was. He was brought up a Catholic, and these are, read it. It's called in English my last breath, but in England they produced it with a better title, My Last Sigh. It's much more poetic. It's a beautiful book. And I visited the bar that he wrote in with his two martinis every afternoon in Mexico City. I found it like a pilgrimage. I had to seek it out. He loved a quiet bar to sit by himself, didn't want to talk to nobody, but those two martinis, gin martinis, had to be there for him. The bar was a sanctuary. It was like what Baudelaire said about having your own enclosure. For him, he wrote in the bar.
And in the film Los Olvidados, it's a group of street kids who are so desperate that they're robbing a blind man, they're robbing a guy with no legs. They One of them murders another kid and makes the younger boy a witness to the murder, and then also has a relationship with his mother as this boy is being kicked out of his home. Is that
That's like listening to the radio in Santa Fe about the dysfunctional families of New Mexico, where we have the highest, you know, child suicide rate. At the end of the movie, which was cut out, and some of it's, but it's at the original end of the movie, not Ibo, but the other little kid, the mother who was holding up the stake in the dream, that kid, Pedro, maybe, he's in the reformatory, he gets picked up. And at the very end, you see chickens squirting all over the place, like in fast speed, really fast. He speeded up, and then he picks up an egg and he looks at you and he takes it and he throws it right into the lens of the camera, which bursts, the egg burst all over the screen, and that's the end. So it implicated, like, those of us that understand, yes, there's dysfunction, but there's real people, and it's the world they live in. It's the tank we live in. We are the product of the world we breathe.
and
You
that
second
egg the egg hitting the camera, was
it
that
believe
did that mean a lot to you at the time?
meant it was the most powerful shot I'd ever seen because it implicated the the audience with the event. It was an autodidactic experience. Now they cut it out when it first came out because it was too visceral. It was a visceral it was a visceral poem in only the way Buñuel could do it, with honesty. Like we're all implicated in this. He wasn't excusing himself. He made the film. It was his lens that was hit.
And the boy, I think it is Pedro, the young boy's name,
Yeah,
and his
Ibo
relationship.
was the tough guy.
Yeah. And so eventually he takes on Hybo and stands up to this bully. I think that's a really powerful moment in the movie where this kid who's picked on by everybody really takes on the world and gets the gumption to do.
Well, here's the thing with gangs. What I found, I developed a little theory called society subculture personality. The leader of the gang is the personality of the gang that comes through his family and the acceptance by everyone else. But every gang leader has a strong man or two with him. And if that guy wasn't there, he's what's called a pifanio or a pendejo. He just has a big fucking mouth. But the guy that says nothing, who stands behind him, might take your head off if he gives you the nod. And that's the way the mafia works. That's the way gangs work. That's the way families work. That's the way tribes work, acculturated to their own form. And so I experience that in the barrio all the time. And we brought all the gangs together, the 7 big ones we work with from all over the city together. We built our own place with the building trades union that came after work, and Mr. Ben at Santa Fe High. And if we had a dispute, we settled it in a boxing ring instead of the basketball ring. I had a big professional boxing ring I got from the St. Mike's High School. And people, you'll see how smart they are when they get in the ring.
I think also the character Hybo, he murders this kid, takes his money, makes Pedro an accomplice or a witness to the murder, and that hangs very heavily over Pedro. And Hybo uses it as a way to manipulate him there. That says a lot more than just about the culture there, but about the culture of exploitation in Mexico at the time.
It could be that, but there always are going to be guys that are, like, don't play straight, or saying one thing and me, or being the boss, and they have to do so through violence. I mean, that happens in the street all the time. all the time. So I'm not judging them. I'm not judging them. I'm aware of it, but I'm saying they're sucking up the pool, to your point, of the world they live in. They're they're shut it off. They're in basically concentration camps. I know that sounds severe for those that don't live that way. Even now in Santa Fe, the richest and the poorest. I mean, at the extremity, people on the street and dogs with the people that keep, those are their only companions.
Yeah, I think in maybe a classic dramatic structure, Hybo is a villain, could be seen as the villain, or perhaps me watching it, I thought, oh, this guy is the villain of this film.
He's the easy villain. He's the target they set up to
But
me.
yeah, and you're describing a real sympathy for this character because
I
he's
am
a
a
victim.
compassion, not judging him, understanding. Like we never see where he comes from. He was always jealous that Pedro had a mother, and he had that to care for him. He was brutal with the old man, and the old man was brutal back to him. Generations of hate.
We're talking with filmmaker Godfrey Reggio, and his latest film, Once Within a Time, premiered at the Santa Fe International Film Festival in October. And it's going to have some really exciting opportunities to be seen in New York City. Plus, there's ways that you can support the forthcoming documentary about the film as well.
Indeed, I never like to reveal the magic behind the trick, but I understand if we did the making of, because a lot of people are so far very interested in that, it would give us a 90-minute or so piece. So that would be an acceptable amount of time to enter in the festivals, theaters, etc. It fits that modem. But let me go to a more important story. In 1982, when Koyaanisqatsi came out, what I really wanted to do was a film in the barrio here, like I saw Buñuel did. But I didn't know how to make it linear and non-linear at the same time. I didn't want speech. I wanted events because of all the things that had happened. I wanted it to be clear, but I didn't know how to do that. I was a young person then. Okay, I was 42. I'm now, this coming month, going to enter my 1,000th month old. I'll be 1,000 months. When I was 700 months old or so, when Anima Mundi came out, it had a big impact on kids unexpectedly. And from then on, I've been thinking about how to make this film I wanted to about the barrio, but now making the barrio the world. So the origin of this is a barrio godfather named Tisnao, Filiberto Valdez, went to the opening in '82 with then the young Michael B. Hill, now a retired judge. And he said after the movie, gee, that Koyaanisqatsi was a good movie. They came out of the Lensic, but thought he was going to make a film like Los Olvidados. So Michael B. Hill says, the judge says recently we should call the film they're going to make on the barrio now, Sam Labor and other people, as Tisnao's Prophecy. This is something we should have made. So this film now is made for children once within a time, made with children for all ages. It's at once linear and non-linear at exactly the same time, clear and ambiguous at the same time, and autodidactic, which means you get to complete the story. This film coming out now is like a whirlwind and it's not even out. But in the next few weeks, Soderbergh will be announcing what to do. And my colleague, John Kane, the co-director, will be working to put out an advert with a little girl as the voiceover, a little girl in the film K who pulls her face down like that. So all of that's in play. And I can't be happier about it because I think it's a film like distribution of 5 years ago was 1,000 years ago. We can have a distributor now that will four wall with you. That's a contradiction in terms for those that understand, without any front money up. So it's, only the imagination is at loss. So, for example, I've been living in Red Hook, Brooklyn for 16 months. I see barges going up and down the river all the time, the East River. We rent a barge, put a huge screen on it, show once within a time on both sides with big speakers and then a way to connect with your headgear.
Tell me a little bit about how you take us there and then bring us back, or take us right to the edge and then the hand comes and says, no, it's okay.
Well, you mean in the movie or the process
In
of
the
making
movie.
in the movie? Well, I do everything in threes. I have a good reason. I don't need to explain it. It's the triangle. It's the avenging triangle, not the avenging angel. Okay. But I always do it with bookends, a prologue and an epilogue. So the prologue is the Garden of Eden, the Apple Man, the and in the Garden of Eden, it's not Eve that eats the apple. It's Adam's apple. It's even in the vernacular. We have an Adam's apple. It's Adam that ate the apple. We turn the whole story upside down. The mother becomes Mother Muse with the crown of roots from Hades, from hell, the crown of roots. She's our muse, okay, opposite of everything we've been told. Then we go into 3 acts. First act, the house is burning. Second act, earth, air, water, fire, money, Molotov cocktail. Third act, time will tell. The time, the time vessel that we look at, the hourglass. In the first one, the house is burning. It's all about children being implicated in the circle, in the square. The circle represents nature and the square technology. And we see it all over, and we see the kids being embedded through their faces, through facial recognition. Kids are being, as you and I talk, they're being bought and sold today as as you would buy chickens or pork or fish. I'm not kidding. It's not a metaphor, it's real. So we show that, and then we show a test dummy at the end of it. And, we are the test dummy, and the test dummy ends up in the gizmo, and boom, we're in the Tower of Babel, Act Two, Earth, Air, Water, Fire, Money. We have this lunatic based on the motions of Mussolini, actually, who told Hitler what to do. He was Hitler's model, by the way, Mussolini adored Hitler. Okay. And we have the wild man selling the apple to the kids, and they all buying it, and they end up in test tubes again with all of their crime information stolen. But they're in a test tube right now. And then time will tell, the Dies Irae, one of the most consequential four notes ever written by monks in France during the early Middle Ages. Kubrick used it for the beginning of The Shining. Hitchcock uses it. It's in adverts all over the place, disguised. We use it with children from Brooklyn, a choir of young kids, with a woman from Santa Fe who's Iranian and Ecuadorian, Tara. And it's beautiful. And we redo it when the monster appears, technology with foghorns. Boom, boom, boom. So this sticks in the head, and it ends up with the epilogue where we have a skyquake 63 miles above us. 67 miles above us is the blue sky. It's only 3 miles deep. Then there's the sky, the black sky above. Okay. We're having rips in our sky right now. We show it as the metaphor or the black swan event. And then and an unexpected event that changes everything. And then we have the Mother Muse reappearing for the children to protect them. Then we have going down the yellow computer chip road, Gizmo Road, rather than the yellow brick road, incorporating culture. Then we go to Mike Tyson, a criminal to fight criminals, and Oracle. He's the God man. He's the mentor, and that was very controversial to choose him for all the proper reasons. One of the smartest guys I've ever met. Did it all free, and did it without making a mistake. and every word he said that was recorded, we put into jazz, Mike Tyson jazz. And we end up at the end where he brings them into the tunnel and where they jump into the audience of having a resolute beginning of changing the world. Your world is your range of relationships. While we live in a connected world, the world we have an opportunity to create is our own world, our own range of relationships directly, not through the gizmo. And that's what Greta Thunberg and all these other people are saying. Children, it's like a children's crusade. They see it better than we do. The children, not of the future, they are the future right now. Demographics, everything.
Well, the film is called Once Within a Time. Godfrey, that's a show. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap it up?
No, I hope that everyone seeing this will send me immediately at least $1 bill to keep my door open. At the end of April, everything closes here. We've done everything not for profit. I get total, absolute, non-negotiable, total control of the film, and my foundation controls all its rights.
So, Godfrey, how can someone send a check to the foundation, or is there an email they can write to?
Yes, go through the gizmo that, fight fire with fire. Give me a hand. If you're hearing this,
Hey, Godfrey, thank you so much. And everybody, thanks for tuning in. This was filmmaker, maestro, Godfrey Reggio. We'll see you next week.